Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Q&A session of Banguoja Audio Festival. My name is Karolis, and today I'm speaking with Suvi Tuuli Kataja. She's a director, scriptwriter, and sound designer from Finland. She's known for her experimental audio storytelling. Last year, Banguoja featured Suvi's short audio piece called When You're Sleeping, I'm Awake. And this year, we have a full-length audio essay called, in Finnish, Natut halua leikkiä, or English title, Bitches Wanna Play. This work explores BDSM, power play, and asks the question, why does pain create sexual pleasure? Suvi, welcome to Banguoja.
Thank you very much. I'm really glad to be here with you.
How are you today? Where did we catch you?
Well, I have been in the office today, and then I was in the gym, and now I'm here to talk. I have worked a little bit, but vacation was just, so I'm making that kind of soft beginning with my works now.
Okay. And your work, Bitches Wanna Play, was it was released in 2021. I'm curious about the very beginning of it. How did you decide that I want to explore the BDSM culture, I want to learn more about sexual pleasure, and I want to do it in audio form? That's I don't think I've ever listened to anything like this in audio. I thought it was really unique and really really well made. So if you could share with our listeners, what was your thinking behind it when you started the project?
Well, I was really interested about kinky sexuality and also in BDSM. And I think that it fascinated me because I feel myself really that I am true feminist. And still I thought that with power plays, there are really great suspense and something really thrilling and also sexual arousal. And I think that I got a little bit inner conflict about that, because as a feminist, I really love equality, but I still felt the feeling about using power and how using power can make your body feel. So I think that conflict was something that I felt that I needed to investigate or explore more. And that's why I started to do this essay.
And I think one of the conclusions that you made is that I really love the analogy of heaven and hell that you put in your essay, that hell feels like more realistic place because that's where the conflict is, that's where the power structures exist. And when we talk about heaven, it's more all the problems are solved, no tension at all. And when there's no tension, there's no sexual energy as well. That's one of the takeaways, that it seems that if you want to sexual pleasure to exist, the power inequality is part of the whole thing, and you kind of just need to accept it. And that was one of the takeaways. What were your own takeaways to this original question that you had before starting the project?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? There was a little bit the line.
Yeah, of course, no worries about that. Just curious. So you had a very clear question, and what did you find something that was surprising in the process? Did you find some answers that you were looking for?
Yes, I was really interested about the suspense. And when I realized that suspense is always something that is, structured from, for example, power plays. The power play can be whatever, and you don't need to feel, for example, shame about that there is, for example, strong man and weak woman, because you can change the roles, because the roles are not the base of suspense. Or who are in the roles. The suspense is because of the roles, and you can put whoever in whatever role. And also I think that it was really interesting that everywhere and every situation where you are using power, it is like a play. For example, if it is in the working place, that is not, real, because it is play that we are playing together, and that play can be whatever, and there can be whoever in that roles, and that also is it is everywhere. It is not just in sex, it is also everywhere else in our society. And that's why it is interesting, because we are living in society where there are that kind of roles that are pretty, for example, old, and they are just presentations, they are just plays we are watching and we are playing together. And I think that was something that I really thought during the process, that play and the suspense and roles together.
And can you talk more about the sound of this work, because it's very musical, and it has original music that you co-wrote, and you wrote yourself with some co-writers, and when you listen to it, it has the music is everywhere, and it just adds so much to the piece. What was your thinking behind what music did you use, and what were you aiming for with your music choices?
Well, I'm glad that you asked about the music, because when I started doing this essay, I was wondering myself that why I'm doing this as audio. And first of all, I couldn't find an oral twist to this project, because I think that always when you are doing an audio, you need to know why you are using audio as a media, and why you are not, for example, doing your piece as a movie or prose or book. So I kind of waited a little bit that there has to be something really oral that I could use in this essay. And then I found researcher Anna-Elena Pääkkölä's doctoral thesis about music and sadomasochism. And when I read about that thesis, I realized that this essay needs to show the suspense, and it needs to give the feeling to your body about the suspense with music. So we planned with Jussi Liukkonen, my co-composer, that we are going to compose the whole essay from start to end, and use music as a really strong narrator.
And you write your own music for your own audio pieces, correct?
In this piece, or all my pieces?
Also in this piece, and want to learn more about, is this your usual practice?
Yes, it depends. Usually I compose myself all the music, but sometimes there is not enough time to compose. But I thought that in this essay it was really important that I really investigate this topic with music, and I really show this topic via music.
And you also find parallels between how music works and how the topic of power play, how even some words like domination, that you found them like both in the context of music and the context of sexuality. I found it really unexpected and really surprising parallel. Can you talk more about that?
Well, in Anna-Lena Pääkkölä's thesis, there were little examples about how music is using sadomasochism, and there were that was Anna Elena's speech where she was talking about that, and well, I think that the basic things are in essay, but what we, as composers, what we try to do was like we try to create something pretty naughty. I think we have called our base that it's naughty base, and we try to create something dark because the topics are also kind of grotesque, and still we try to keep their funny things, because the one conflict is when you are using funny and dark things together. So then we can go to the dark humor that I was also talking about in this essay. And I'm not sure, did I answer to your question, but so maybe I lost it.
No worries.
Yeah.
You're right. The answers are in the essay, and I guess what I just wanted to share the thought that it was kind of unexpected parallel, but when I heard, I thought like, yeah, of course, that makes total sense. So I hope that we're not sure if people will listen. People will have a choice. They can either listen to our interview before the piece or after the piece. So anyway, at some point you have to listen to the essay. And so your essay was made in Finnish language. It was published at, it was broadcasted at Yle, the Finnish public broadcaster. Tell us more about that process. How, because I assume that that's not a typical not a typical subject for things you hear on public radio in Finland. So how did you pitch it, and what was the reaction? How did the listeners react? Talk us through that.
Well, when I told about this topic to the producer in Yle, Juha-Pekka Hotinen, he is the head of Radio Galleria. He told me, he sent me a message where he said that this sounds really interesting. We are going to do this. Even some people are going to choke with this joke. So, but I think that it was. I have thought that it is really, really hard to, get some pat attention in radio. It is. I have done many topics, for example, about women's anger, and we made a fiction radio channel from hell, and that kind of things. And no one haven't been really angry about the topic. So I think that it's pretty safe to do that kind of topics in radio. And well, my piece first. The radio slot was like in prime time, but when the producer of the channel heard this essay, she said that it is really great, but we are not able to play that in prime time, so this is going to be in the night at 10 p.m. And I really understand, because she said that in prime time there is also children who are listening in cars. So I really understood that it was great solution to change the time to broadcast this essay.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. But there were no thoughts like, oh, this is like too, I don't know, too provocative or too something to play on public radio.
I think that this essay is kind of in borders, because it could be possible that it would be just in Finnish Broadcasting Company audio platform, in no broadcast at all. But I think that it was kind of in the border that way, that it was in the night time. And also when biggest magazine in Finland, Helsingin Sanomat, wrote critics about this essay, the the writer was like that it is really great essay, but it was a little bit too much. So I think that it also tells about that it is like the borders, that it is too much or not.
What exactly was too much for the writer? I guess some of there is a part somewhere in the middle where there is this like BDSM fantasy.
Yes.
It's very graphic.
Yes.
That's I guess that's one of the things that can be challenging for listeners. But for you, it was important to include it.
I think that this was important to include, and you talked about the BDSM fantasy, and I think that it is the thing what was too much, because when I tried the essay, I played the essay to test listeners. I saw how they was reacting in that part of essay. Some people was like laughing, and some people was like, "Oh my God, this is so gross." And I think that this was really interesting reaction, because it is the way the dark humor is challenging us. We are laughing, or we are like, "No, I don't want to hear this anymore." And that's really interesting, reactions, because they are so different.
And on one hand, your original question about kind of thinking whether you are a good feminist or a bad feminist, when and you refer to your own in your own essay that these what is called feminist sex words been going since like the 80s or even earlier. But if we go to this moment that where we are now, and for Finnish listeners, why this? On one hand, this piece is very timeless, but also does it speak particular to this moment in Finland? Is there a broader conversation about sexual pleasure, about different sides of feminism happening in Finland right now that this piece speaks to?
I think that in Finland, feminist discussion is going bigger and bigger, but it's still not so big that I could call it like mainstream. I think that the change is slow, but there is so deep understanding of equality that I just need to trust that even there is something shitty things in politics nowadays, I really like to believe that there is so strong feminist thinking that it will, make things better in future. And if I wasn't sure that, did you ask also about the topic of BDSM, how it is in Finland, or just this feminist?
Yeah, would be curious to learn. I would be curious to learn more about it, because it's like in Lithuanian context, you rarely get any like public debate regarding BDSM. It's almost like non-existent. I would imagine that maybe Finland is more open about it. So just trying to learn more about what is the context there.
Yes, I think that in Finland, BDSM or kinky sexuality is not mainstream. I think that it's more like underground culture still, but there is something really interesting happening, because, for example, there have been a couple of topics, for example, in Finnish Broadcasting Company news, that are handling, for example, shibari or sex workers, and the way they are writing and talking about these kind of topics is changing. And also here in Helsinki metropolitan area, I'm not sure about how these things are in northern Finland, but there is, for example, Shibari Club, Helsinki Shibari, where are workshops to learn Shibari, to use ropes, and they are usually always full. If you want to join to learn Shibari, then you probably need to wait a couple of months because there are not enough workshops. And then there is some organizations, I'm not sure what they are, which are working now, that organize some BDSM events. And then there are private sex parties where you need invitation if you would like to join. But if you want to join sex parties, I think that you just need to ask a couple of your friends and then you find some sex party to join. And then there was also sex festivals called Wanderlust. I'm not sure is this festival coming back, because after Corona, some things just disappeared at all. But I think that there is really lively underground culture of kinky sexuality and BDSM, but it is not mainstream yet. And I think that I'm pretty glad about it because, for example, 50 Shades of Grey, it is mainstream. And
It is.
It is mainstream, and it is not pretty interesting. There is a strong man who is using weak woman, and when that kind of story is in mainstream, it creates also the reality. So I think that if BDSM goes mainstream, I'm sure is that possible because the BDSM is grotesque and BDSM is funny because it is so grotesque. So I'm not sure is that any more BDSM or BDS fantasies if there are like that kind of stories that we already know and we already can wait and we can enjoy that kind of love stories we have heard before. And
Yeah, and you mentioned 50 Shades and said, yeah, it was a strong man and a rather weak woman. In your essay, you focus on women, and
Yes.
that's um, I assume that was your intention. That was an intentional choice. Can you tell more about that? Because women talking about sexual pleasure is still can be seen as a taboo for in certain parts of society, I would assume.
I like to. I think that handling lesbians is really great way to handle patriarchy, because lesbians are really free from patriarchy. And when they are using that kind of power structures that are using in patriarchy, it is kind of conflict. Are they, playing with each other that patriarchy they are escaping? No, they are not escaping. They are like, that was wrong word, but they are not joining in their own parties, in their own sex life. And what that means that they are so deep in patriarchy that they bring it to the lesbian groups or lesbian culture as a BDSM sex, where they are using power, like power structures are using power. They are, using power against women. So I thought that the question is more interesting when I'm not taking any men with. And I also thought when I read a lot of books when I made this essay. I read about what was the names? It is in Finnish Markiisides Sade, but I'm not sure how it is in English. Sade, who has written a lot of sadistic prose, like I'm not sure what the names are in English. I'm really sorry because I read them in Finnish. And then there
No
is.
worries about that. Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Oh no, that's okay. That's okay.
Yes.
Regarding the names. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and then there was the masochist man also. I cannot remember his name either. I'm not sure. Am I proud that I'm not remembering the names, or am I a little bit feeling shame about that? Do I need to Google them? But they are the men behind the words sadomasochism and sadism and masochism. So it is like Venus in fur or something like that. Another book, and another was like Justine, for example, if I remember correctly. So I thought that this man has had so much space to tell this story, and the men are that media is, handled that there are that these two men who has created sadomasochism, and I thought that was a little bit boring. And when I found Finnish sadomasochist lesbian group Ecstasy, I thought that this is interesting because they were like free from the history of sadomasochism, and they created their own way to do BDSM, sadomasochism, and presentations about that. And I thought that was something that I didn't find anything when I Googled, and that's why I started to investigate that also.
Yeah, sounds like a good way to start an audio project. That you have a question in mind, you have you want to seek the truth, seek some knowledge, and then you can share it with the listeners and just spread it further. That's what your piece does, and it feels like if you could just take a script of Bitches Wanna Play, it would be a great essay on its own. And you talked earlier about how you thought, how can this work as an audio piece? I want to go back a little bit to that question, because I guess different people get knowledge differently. Like maybe some people like to read more, and that's how they get information. Others like to listen. Why did you decide to make this essay an audio piece? Because it could work in different formats. But what does this layer of sound gave to the piece, in your opinion?
Well, I think the audio is really great way to handle this kind of topics. As media, I think that audio is really unique because it uses mental images, and listener can build the images in their head, in their own heads. So audio kind of operates with listeners' experiences, memories, and imagination. So they can calibrate things so naughty as they want, or for example, so scary than they can handle, or so funny than they want. So I think that it's pretty safe to listen this kind of grotesque topics as audio. And I also think that because BDSM is like a fantasy world, so there are not possibilities to describe or give the authentic experience of that side of BDSM. So I kind of think that imagination is the best possible way to get so close to this experience of BDS fantasy as it is possible. But well, if we are talking about, in general audio and what is the kind of why I would like to use this, why I did like audio essay and I didn't do text essay, and why I do audio essays instead of
of course,
text essays. I think that the most important thing is that there are many experiences that are not able to felt via words, because the words, they are just not enough. For example, when we're talking about this kind of essay, if you try to tell someone that how it feels when the music is moving primitively your body and you are in trance, that experience is somewhere beyond words, and it is just impossible to demonstrate via or with text. But with audio, it is possible to give experiences that goes through your body, and it is just not about that you know that there is that kind of feeling. You can feel the feelings.
Yeah, and I feel like so much talk about like sexuality and BDSM as well. It's I guess people have certain visuals attached to it, and there's a lot of you can find pornography visualizing all that. But when you remove that and when you have that all in your imagination, it just hits you somehow differently, and the effect is really powerful of this work. And I guess just in the end, I just want to ask in general, like, do you feel like as a society we should have more open conversations regarding sex, regarding the kinky side of sex, and what do we gain by kind of opening this topic and just engaging with it without kind of scandalizing it, but just looking into it like as just another topic? What do we gain from it? What do you gain from it as someone who engages with that?
I think that we could, if we are talking about, it is talking about diversity, because if we are talking just about relationships between man and woman, and you know, you need to have sex in 2 times a week and this kind of discussion, I think that it is really small part of people. And I think that because we have just our one life, then there is many people who just don't know that, for example, they would like to try kinky sex, or they would like to try to use some sweets or wear some clothes or that kind of things, because there is so much shame, because it's so intimate thing. And I think that it's really good that it's intimate thing, because sex is, and it is important, and it is also the strength about that. But I also think that if we are just talking more about diversity, and not just only these 2 guys who are woman and man and they are having their hetero sex, and so I think that it's kind of unfair to every other people who are different, and there is much different people in Finland. Sadomasochism was disease before, and I think that it's crazy. It's kind of crazy because there was nothing that could prove that it's disease, but it wasn't like basic sex. So they thought that it is disease because it is not the way we have used to think about sex. So that is unfair, I think. And I also think that when we can talk so that we respect each other, we respect if you like something or you don't like, and we can talk things so that they are just things, then I think that it would be really get richer, that we could have more diversity and we could have more stories, and the word could be a little bit more real and more lively.
Yeah. And when you mentioned the laws, I remember that homosexuality was considered like a crime in Lithuania since the early 90s. So yeah, it's things are changing, and it's really great to hear someone like you reflecting and on that and just going deeper into into these topics without, as you said, without a shame, without judgment, and just with a lot of curiosity. So thank you for bringing your piece to Banguoja listeners, and thank you for this additional bonus interview accompanying it. So thank you, Suvi Tuuli Kataja, and hope to see you in Vilnius at Banguoja at some point. And for now, enjoy your time in Helsinki, in Finland.
Thank you very much.